Welcome to the Safeguarding Podcast. In each episode, we'll discuss a different safeguarding topic with a range of expert speakers. Please be aware some of this content is sensitive and listener discretion is advised.
Hello and welcome to the Safeguarding Podcast. I am Vicky Chafe. I am Head of Community and Partnership Relations at the Safeguarding Company, and I am delighted to be your host today. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about mental health and wellbeing and the role of AI. I am so happy to introduce today's guest, Jon Ford, founder and CEO of Life on Time. Jon, can you please introduce yourself?
Hi Vicky, thanks for getting us on the podcast. Yeah, I'm Jon. I'm co-founder, co-creator of YouHQ. So the business is actually Life on Time Limited, but our product name is YouHQ, and we've developed a wellbeing product to try and help support not only schools but their students and help them pick up on kids that maybe are struggling and give them the tools to be able to thrive. So yeah, really interested to sort of jump on the podcast and sort of talk to you about our experiences going out visiting schools at the moment and how potentially AI could assist maybe schools in the future with the wellbeing and mental health issues that they may be facing.
Fantastic. This is another conversation that is very close to my heart. I am a safeguarding governor of a school. I was previously one at a primary school and one at a secondary school at the moment. And one of the issues that we're facing is the spike in self-harm as well. So it'll be really good to have this conversation about how we can support around wellbeing and mental health. So first question I want to ask you is, tell us about the role that YouHQ plays in schools currently.
Yeah, so what we've done over the last sort of 2-3 years is we've created a platform that allows schools to be able to give student voice or get student voice and capture it. So it allows kids to self-reflect, say how they're feeling, which can come as an alert to teachers, as an email alert, to be able to alert them of any children that maybe are struggling. So that's one of the key features. Sort of when we ask schools now that are using YouHQ what the best bits are, it's allowing them to pick up on those kids that they may not be aware of. So that's one of them, but we're far more than just a sort of a wellbeing tracker. We've got lots of resources on there to be able to actually support the kids if they are struggling. It also gives wellbeing resources to teachers. So we're more of a pastoral hub with lots of multifunctional features to be able to support schools with all their wellbeing and mental health needs. But yeah, I guess where the safeguarding side of it comes into it from YouHQ is, and where it integrates with my concern, is it allows schools and sort of DSLs, wellbeing leads, to be able to sort of track and monitor wellbeing and pick up on any of those concerns and give students that opportunity to be able to reach out.
Absolutely. And we had a conversation last week, didn't we, about the fact that we really value partnerships that we have and having that frictionless process so that the person who needs to know about those safeguarding concerns, i.e. the DSL in this instance, finds out about those concerns instantly, and having those integrations makes that process much more quick, much more smooth, and make sure that the DSL or whomever is in charge of safeguarding gets to those concerns quickly.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, that's what we're finding. And when we say, obviously, around our safeguarding integrations, that's one of the real key selling points, because yes, schools want to be aware, they want to have that data to be able to pick up on the kids, they want to give them the opportunity to be able to reach out if they are struggling, but they also don't want to sort of double the workload if they're running sort of safeguarding systems. So yeah, our sort of being able to integrate and for them to be able to, for staff to be able to put it straight into their safeguarding platform is really, really useful.
And from my point of view as a previous teacher, it's great to have those systems in place that do give you those highlights as to what's going on with your children, but actually to tell you how you can support them is that next step as well, which sometimes it's great that you have them, but sometimes that's all the information that you're given, and then you have to think, right, well, where do I go from here? So it's great to be able to have all that in one place.
Yeah, so that's what we're finding. And when we first created the platform, it was very much just a sort of a hub for them to be able to search for their own resources to help themselves. But what we've now developed is within the tracking is yes, they can say how they're feeling and reach out, but also we're trying to give them the tools on the platform to be able to help themselves. So we're just hearing up and down the country and around the world with some of our schools internationally that um, there's just so they've got so much to be doing. There's so much more incidents of issues that actually schools are scared of sometimes having this well-being monitoring or tracking because they don't know necessarily how to deal with the results that are going to come out of it. So the integration is really important, but also being able to have the features where when they record a low mood or they record that their anxiety is high, there's something there digitally to be able to support them in their own space. And this is what we're finding. We're just finding that kids are more comfortable reaching out on a platform like ours rather than necessarily speaking up in a classroom, which saddens me to some extent. But unfortunately, I think the genie's out of the bottle on whether you believe it's right that they should be communicating through a digital platform. So that's one of the things that we're trying to work on continually is to be able to take the stress off the DSL, off the wellbeing leads, and hopefully being able to help the kids on the platform. That said, I think it's really important that we still have the ability where there is that human contact, and the human contact is there between when a child says that there's a low mood alert or says they're not feeling good. So that's what we think is really, really important.
Absolutely. When you were talking about some people feel a certain type of way of having children reporting concerns through a digital platform as opposed to going and speaking to somebody, I worked in an area that children found it incredibly difficult to talk about how they were feeling most of the time because they didn't really understand it. Um, and I had created a box for children to write their names and anything that worries it. We used to call them a worry box. And essentially, it's doing that, but just on a digital platform as opposed to on a piece of paper in a box.
Exactly right. And I think that this is the key thing that we're not trying to take away that personal element, that intuition that a teacher has in the classroom. So that obviously builds in to everything. What we're trying to do is just give that extra avenue for those kids that may not be confident enough to be able to actually reach out. And the whole thing as well is the digital side, so you can record it. So you can actually start picking
Hmm.
up on trends, and our platform can help you pick up on trends across the school, across the year groups, across smaller focus groups of actually what's affecting their mood. And what we're finding is that it's actually there's trends across the schools that are very similar, and rather than you guessing like, okay, we think there's an issue with this, there is actually a specific there is actually something you can pinpoint, and then you can act on it. So sleep is something that we're seeing across all our schools as a real issue for low mood and also good moods and high moods. So what schools can now do is actually have a assembly around sleep, or they can inform their strategy moving forward around sleep. So it's far more than just highlighting an issue, which obviously is really important that kids have that. It's actually trying to build strategy and build tools and resources to be able to support the mental health leads, the pastoral leads, who we know are so busy, and actually inform their strategy.
Absolutely. And for me, that really resonates because I'm passionate about being a proactive safeguarder. And that's exactly the same thing that you're talking about. It's using that data to inform CPD of training of staff or putting things in place to support the children. I'm a huge advocate of supporting children to support themselves as well because we can't be there 24/7. But unless we've got the data to analyse where those trends are, then we're not able then to put those strategies in place. And it's that whole strategic safeguarding, the being proactive, and that's taking that safeguarding to that next level. And that's exactly what you're talking about here, so that you're not just firefighting anymore.
Yeah, exactly right. And yeah, I think the thing is what we're fighting. It's about prevention, isn't it? I think you don't want to get the issue to
Yeah.
become so severe that actually you're then having a lot of time in meetings and that type of stuff. So if we can try and nip it in the bud, it may only seem like a low level concern at the beginning, but at least you're jumping in. I mean, we've got a first hand experience now with lots of different case studies and stories coming out of schools using YouHQ, where it may potentially not seem a huge issue, but a low mood, a child will log in and register a low mood, and they may have already been behaving badly, or there might be some type of issue, but it makes the tutor then obviously check in with that child, and then they've got an intervention in place, and it might be something really simple, but that then has affected that child's behaviour. So what we're also hearing across the board is behaviour has been really challenging in secondary schools, especially. And yeah, we're seeing that actually, there are potentially things around the mental health and wellbeing of the child that may be causing that behaviour. So rather than maybe going down the traditional behavioural route, what we're finding is actually mood and wellbeing, and if we can intervene and put something in place, that can really help.
Absolutely. And lockdown still got a lot to answer for in that respect, hasn't it? Certainly when you're talking about secondary schools, something that we found is that, and other DSLs that I've been speaking to as well, is that our year eights are really struggling. Now, those year eights are the ones that miss their rites of passage, if you will, as they moved from primary school into secondary school. So all of the behaviour, it's very immature. It's their mental health, really, they really struggle. They really struggle with those friendship groups as well. So having something that you can analyse that data to track those trends, and then have the resources then to support that, it's so important.
That's really interesting you say year eight, because I was at a year eight launch, and I had to speak to a year group of sevens, eights, and nines, and the year eights it was unbelievable, to be honest, compared to the year sevens and year nines, and they knew that there was an issue. And you saying that actually makes you think actually that must be across the board rather than just a coincidence.
It's got to be, has it? And everybody that I speak to, they all say that it's that year eight that they have all of the most of the behaviour. In fact, all of the exclusions that we did over the past, exclusions and suspensions that we did over the autumn term, 90% of them were year eights.
Yeah, that's it's incredible, isn't it? I mean, and I suppose that is down to, it's got to be a COVID related thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on to AI now, what impact will the AI trend have, or is having, on the industry?
So I don't think it necessarily has a huge impact on school-based applications, because I know that we're in a sort of a growing market. There's not many other sort of platforms that are doing what we're doing. There are a few, but there's not a huge amount. I think if you look, I guess where we need to look is maybe to the general public and general pop type apps that are the mental health apps and what they're doing. And we've been looking at that with curiosity, I would say, at the moment, rather than having any hard plans of building AI into YouHQ. But what we're seeing is there is fundamentally a lack of resource, as in therapists, counsellors, people to deal with and help these people that are struggling with their mental health. And because of that, and it's almost the speed at which people the mental health issues are increasing versus the level of people getting into becoming a trained therapist, or the NHS's funding behind that, it's just not going to match up. So actually, to be able to cope and make an impact, we're just looking at, and I think this is where AI potentially can help, and just better tech really, in being able to support people at a lower level. So triaging people, maybe dealing with people that are, or dealing with issues which maybe can be sort of nipped in the bud, rather than becoming sort of a really severe mental illness, which then needs counselling. So yeah, it's a really interesting area. It's quite scary, and I think everybody I speak to thinks exactly the same, that actually, where we are today, and where we're going to be in sort of 5 years' time, I can't imagine that we won't be using it. And what I see from there's some people there's a lot of funding and a lot of really good research that actually it can really help. So there is a platform out there that, and a lot of NHS current therapy work for the general pop is based around text services. So you may be able to get sessions with a therapist, but it'll be over text message, which has been proven to help. And what some of the AI that I'm hearing about is working is it's not necessarily communicating with the person or the client. It's actually just informing the counsellor on how to respond to the client. So, for example, if somebody comes on and says that their texts in text format, I'm struggling with anxiety over something, that the AI will read all the other responses that have been successful and recommend the counsellor of what to say. And they're doing studies based on somebody who starts therapy to finishing therapy and what's the most successful sort of text to use. So these are the things that I find really interesting. But yeah, the actual having a machine support a young person in a school without a person is something that's definitely not. I can't see that happening, but I can definitely see how we can get certain things done that can save some time, which will give more time to a teacher or to a safeguarding lead with face to face with that student. So it's taking maybe some of the admin away, and that's what we're focusing on, maybe the reporting side of stuff, and being able to automate reports. So you're getting better insights, better content to be able to support. So exactly what you said right from the beginning was, okay, I've got these 10 children that have registered low mood. What the hell do I do? And yeah, our data is now going to show you hopefully exactly how they're feeling, so you get better insight in exactly what they're feeling before you go into that conversation. And maybe you have in your toolkit some resources to be able to show them, so you may be able to support them just by stuff that's been created, or resources that's been created and data that's been created by YouHQ and by what they've put in.
So for somebody who doesn't know a huge amount about AI, would you say that, for example, it could be used the way that it's used at the moment in the NHS by when people ring 111? Because I think that that's when you were saying that they listen to the answers that you give, and then they're told by the AI what they need to ask next. Do you think that's possibly how we could be used within schools?
I think possibly, yeah. In the long run, I still, because it's children, I think it's different. So with adults, they give the consent. With the school, it's very much the consent, and the data protection around children is far stronger, and rightly so. So I think we're probably quite a way away from that still, from a child's perspective. But yes, again, looking in 5-10 years time, where AI is going to be, and also looking at schools' resources. I mean, if I was going into schools now and I was seeing that there wasn't really much mental health issue out there, and there was lots of resource, and each school had their own 2 dedicated counsellors, and the funding was there for that, and there was funding for a full-time mental health lead that didn't have to teach as well. If I was going into schools seeing that, then I would say, actually, we don't need any support. But what I'm seeing firsthand, and I've not been in education, but I go in, and I've come from a business background, and I go in and just see a completely unresourced, or not all of the time. So I'm sort of taking the average here, but especially state secondary schools, I'm just seeing there's a real shortage of resource to be able to support young people's mental health, and also teachers' mental health. So yeah, that's the reason why I would say, if the government can't afford to be able to pay for counsellors or for CAMS to have double its capacity, which we can't see that happening, then where does tech fit in? Can tech help? And yeah, as I say, I'm curious at the moment, rather than thinking or planning that we're going to build it in, but I'm just extremely curious to find out, and we're investigating what the best ways are, and what is actually a safe way to do it, because obviously you don't want to. It's very easy with mental health and wellbeing. You can make somebody's problem a lot worse by giving them the wrong advice. And we've got clinical psychologists as our Wellbeing director at YouHQ, and yeah, he's very much on this and advising us on what we need to do. So yeah, we just got to be really clear on what we do, but it's just extremely frustrating, which I can imagine, some of the listeners to this podcast are probably feeling. It's extremely frustrating that, you're finding out that there's lots of issues, but potentially there's a real issue in how you can deal with them. And doctors are prescribing kids to go back, or recommending children and parents to go back to their school to get support at their school, and the school don't have any way of doing that. So yeah, it's just really frustrating.
And it's interesting that you should say that, because we've just done another podcast around consent, and we were talking to Dr. Emily Setti about the fact that teachers are expected to have these conversations that they have no training for, that they have no support for, that could actually be quite triggering for themselves as well. And that's exactly what you're saying from a mental health and well-being. As educators, we're expected to not only teach our children, but we're expected to help them grow as humans, and how to be in society and be mentally healthy. But we just don't have the resources, the time, the training for us to be able to do that.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think that's what my co-founder, who was a teacher, echoes, in that, when all newly qualified teachers should have a whole segment of their training on mental health and wellbeing. If they're now if they're now responsible for it, which I guess they are, that it's even more so, then why should they not be trained on that? So it just seems ludicrous that they're not. And I know the government have, like, during COVID, they did put money in, and they did, there is training, there was some funding, but yeah, to me, it's almost like it's just nowhere near enough for what the problem is at the moment.
Absolutely. Is there a preferred combination of softwares and technologies you think that schools should adopt to support their total safeguarding and ensuring that mental health and well-being of pupils and staff?
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm obviously going to say yes to that question.
Yes,
I think
as we do.
yeah. I think definitely. I think the key thing here is combining the two. So obviously the recording and of safeguarding, is well established now. You've got, rather than writing it down on a bit of paper and sticking it in a filing cabinet, this has got to be the best way of doing it. And I know that the systems that you run, they can link in with other services, so you're picking up a fuller picture of that child. And I think what the next step is, being able to match that and marry that with your other systems, such as well-being trackers, and behavior trackers and this type of stuff, so you can get a holistic whole view of that child, so you can pick up on things early. And I think that's the whole thing, is it's all about picking stuff up early, and getting early intervention in there, whether that's mental illness, whether that's behavior, whether that's health things. I think that's the key. And I think that's where sort of our platform, your platform, can really help schools not only help their kids, but hopefully save time. I know time, like we keep talking about, and it's all about time. They don't, teachers are getting asked to do more, giving them another platform, another login, especially after COVID, all this sort of stuff. But what we're really trying to do is just make it really easy. So teachers don't even have to log into our platform. They'll just get an email notification. They get email reports. They obviously, we want them to go in. And we've also created a wellbeing section for teachers. So, we're trying to create, like I say, it's a pastoral hub that hopefully schools can use and integrate with their safeguarding systems.
Absolutely. And I am sure that our listeners will be sick of hearing me say this, but it's the whole safeguarding context and the whole safeguarding culture. We can't be working in silos. We're only one piece of that child's puzzle. And looking at their safeguarding concerns, you have to look at any mental health and well-being concerns that there are. You need to have a look at their behaviour tracker, and that all needs to come together, just as you need to speak to their football coach or their after school club organisers, or anybody that has a significant role within that child's life. It's all about putting those pieces together to get that full picture. And every serious case review that you read, one of the main things that it comes out and says is that people didn't talk to each other, and different sectors didn't talk to each other. And we need to make sure that we are highlighting that, hey, not only do we need to talk to each other, but we need to work together as well, because we all hold important information around that child.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it's interesting you're talking about the football club. So we are talking to sports clubs now as well. So how it all interlinks. And I coach a girls football team, and it's obviously you see these people. You have lots of different touch points, obviously where people are seeing them, and if there's an issue, it's just really important to be able to jump in there. And safeguarding. Unfortunately, we always talk about like those horrible scenarios. We're all scared of the worst case, and that's what we are protecting.
Yeah.
But from a positive perspective, we're far more than just this tracker. We're trying to actually give the kids the skills to be able to look after themselves. We've got goal setting in there, personal development tools, like CBT type tools. So we're trying to give them the skills to live that fulfilling, successful, meaningful life, rather than when people are talking about safeguarding, they sometimes think of that worst thing. So we're trying to do the other side of it as well. So we're trying to actually, if there is a child that's struggling, there is support on there for them to be able to sort of learn those skills. So I try and our motivation behind the platform is very much around trying to give the whole school those tools to be able to thrive. Rather than trying to just pick up on those kids that are struggling, which unfortunately is always. It comes back as one of the key features, but there is obviously lots of other stuff to it.
Of course there is. I could talk about this all day.
Same here.
It's just something that it's so important, and I think as adults we struggle with our own mental health, and I think that we struggle to talk about it, and certainly our age group, I think that we're more open to talking about it now, whereas previous generations, it was very much a taboo subject, and we find it hard to navigate ourselves around our own mental health. So put yourself in that child's position, where they've also got the hormones, they've got the life constraints that they've got as well. It just must be really, really difficult. So to be able to give them those resources to try and help themselves, it's just so important.
Yeah, and also the opportunity. I just think of from when I'm 42 years old, so when I was at school, there was no mobile app, social media. Like it was like if you had a problem, you would go and talk to somebody, wouldn't you? Or you knew you had to go and talk to somebody. Where now I think they're just so much more used to just talking, communicating through WhatsApp, all the different apps they've got out there. They're not used to doing that. And although we need to encourage them to do that, so we're definitely not trying to get them to not do that, but we're just giving them that opportunity. So I think that's one of the key reasons why, our new versions coming out, we've just really made our sort of mood check-in so much more sophisticated now, that it will be able to pick up on their emotions and be able to hopefully show them resources which will match what they need to see to be able to help themselves. So I like you could talk about this forever, or not ever, but for a long time, because this is all I do.
Yeah, it's just so important. And I can't thank you enough for joining me today on our podcast. We have show notes as well. Is there a link that you can send to us for any of our listeners if they want to find out more, or if they want to contact you about anything?
Yeah. Please visit our website. It's youhq.co.uk. That's youhq.co.uk. You can try it for free. We've got a demo site, which there's no cost. You can just jump on there. We can send you the link, and you can have a play around with it. And then if you want to proceed, let us know.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, Jon. And listeners, as ever, if you want to carry on the conversation, please come and join us in the safeguarding community. Share your own wellbeing practices, or any thoughts that you have on the conversations that we've been having today. Again, thank you, Jon, for joining me today, and thank you everybody else for listening. And until next time, please keep yourself safe. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to the Safeguarding Podcast. For resources and more information about our safeguarding solutions, please visit thesafeguardingcompany.com. And don't forget, if you've enjoyed this episode, subscribe and feel free to rate us using whichever podcast provider you use.